Thank you. Good afternoon. I think it's very hard to follow a talk given by Al, as always. And I think so much you have learned about Charles and MBE in the past two talks. First of all, I have a disclaimer. I'm not an MBE grower. But I spent so much of my career to benefit from MBE growers. And Charles was the first one. Really helped me to launch my career. Okay? And I also want to declare that at Bell Lab, there's nothing called boss. The department chair, the department head in Bell Lab, just like the department chair in the university. So especially in the research area, I think the department head tend to be rotated. So I would never say I am Charles' boss. We are good colleagues, we are good friends. I think that's something I always treasure for my whole life. I have only two jobs. When I graduated in 1978, I went to Bell Labs. At that time, for some incident to my health, I only interviewed at IBM, Watson, and the Bell Lab Murray Hill. Before I got an offer, I have a clear preference to go to Bell Lab. Do you know why? IBM Watson at that time, most of the time you have to wear a tie. Not at Bell Lab Murray Hill. So the two parts, the first part is really, I work on the MBE and related heterostructure devices and materials. The second part, I went to Houston, and we started trying to commercialize MBE. So that's the two parts of my talk. When we arrived at Bell Lab at the same time, I also graduated, got my degree I went to college in 1971, the same year as Charles did. So we also start postdoc, but I started postdoc at Bell Lab. And I became MTS the same time when Charles joined Bell Labs. So we pretty much started a career at the same time. That was also heydays after the civil rights movement. So at that time in Bell Lab, we studied Asian American for affirmative action. And I think last evening with Ms. Watson, we talked about Arnold Penzias. He was the president there, and Venkata and Murthy. I show this picture because I want to show the student in the center, Jin Huang. He was my classmate at college at National Taiwan University. And he was one of the early growers of the MBE materials. He and Agasser grew the samples to demonstrate the the modulation doping, which led to the Nobel Prize of the fractional quantum Hall effect. But when Jin Huang was doing MBE at that time, he was the first one to tell me about MBE, but I didn't learn anything from him because when I started at that time, I was working on Josephson Junction Group there. You may remember at that time, IBM has over 100 researchers working on the superconducting computer. And basically, that's what I was doing the first 5 years. And I was the one transferred that technology from research to development. And I was the one went to my director, Joe Jordan, and suggested him to kill the project 1 year before IBM did. So I was very proud of that. 1983, after I killed the Josephson Junction project at Bell Lab at that time, that was the time Ray Dingle moved from research to development to start the development project for the high electron mobility transistor in Bell Lab. We call it MOSFET. So that was the time I started to get much closer to Charles and learn about MBE because I got all the MBE samples from Charles. I think the major accomplishment we did at that time was in '86. These days, I dig out from Bell Lab News. We accomplished this high-speed switch signal, the new speed record at that time, published on the Bell Lab News in January 1986. Then, 1986, I was in charge of the MBE materials and all the heterostructure development program at Bell Lab at that time. And the key milestone there is 1987. We won the DARPA program to build the third gallium arsenide pilot production line. The history there was that really we wrote the first proposal based on the ion implant MOSFET. But when the red team come in to review the proposal, the red team said you don't have a winning strategy. So we were called in at the last minute to rewrite the whole proposal based on MBE and the MOSFET. And that worked with Hughes and also with McDonald Douglas. We won the third pilot production line. And that led to the pilot line at Reading. And I have been working on the development side until 1990. I transferred back to research. The reason I highlighted in red 11151, that was Al Cho's department, 11151. And that time was a heyday, so let's say a few words. That's the number I dig out from the Bell Lab News. Al, he was promoted to the department head in 1981. In 84, 81 he was elected to the IEEE Fellow. So that was the early days when the MB really become established and be recognized, become a really useful research tool, more than just for science, but also for practical application. That was why Ray Dingle was transferred from research to development to start to try to turn that into some useful things. And in 1987, Al became the director. At that time, that was the highest rank of Chinese ever hold in Bell Lab environment. Okay, that was highest rank as a directorship. There's a slide shown earlier in 86. We wear ties because there's a photo op. So we were asked to wear a tie at that time. That's not what we usually do. And that's what happened in 87. We transferred the MB and the MOSFET technology to Reading, Pennsylvania. That's the DARPA pilot production line. I still remember at that time, in 86, I went to, in 87, I went to DARPA to present the proposal to work on the MB as a production machine. DARPA questioned, how could that be possible? MB would never become a production machine. My counter with that was I show a slice of the ion implanter in the early days. And there's a whole room full of equipment. The whole floor was covered with cables. It's a mess. So at that time I told DARPA, that's what happened. US at that time did not invest into ion implanter. At that time in 87, the whole ion implanter equipment business was monopolized by Japan. So I told DARPA, if we did not invest into MB at that time, that would happen to MBE. So that's how we convinced DARPA at that time to commit the third pilot production line to MB in 86 and 87 timeframe. After that, I moved to Houston. That's what we did in Houston at that time to develop the type 2 quantum cascade laser based on gallium antimonide and indium arsenide. The reason I show this slide is the person on the right-hand side is Thompson Lin. He just graduated just got his Ph.D. degree, came to Houston to join me even before I arrived in Houston. The reason I show him is he, at that time, didn't know how to grow anything with MBE. He came to Houston just like what Al said, okay? Bring somebody in from the street, show him how to do the MBE. That's how he started. Thompson Lin. I think some of you know who is Thompson Lin. The story will come later. So he came to Houston in 1994. 6 years later, we incubated, in 1997, he founded the company, Applied Optoelectronics. We incubated the company on campus for 3 years. In 2000, he raised the first $7 million and moved to the southwest suburb of Houston. There's a groundbreaking. They built their own building. They built their own MB machine. They bought their MB lab by the machine and started to commercialize MB growing devices. That was in 2000. That's a long journey from that point on. Remember what happened in 2000? .com bust. But they survived. So that's good for them because their competitor all died. But sometimes the life will play tricks on you. They were all set to go public in 2008. Remember what happened in 2008? Okay, Morgan Stanley was all set to go public. They missed the window by 1 month. Ready to go public, the whole plan was scrapped in 2008. It took a long time. That's 2013. Finally, they went public on NASDAQ. That's what happened to their stock. It's a rocky road. The IPO at $10. They went up to $28 at that time and got sacked by Google Fiber because they chose not to use the AOI lasers at the Austin trial. So the price came down. It came down all the way down to there in the mid-2016. It was down to below $9. And it shot up to 103 within how many months? Then it got sacked again by Amazon because they were the major producer of the optical link for the data centers, and Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So in the past year, you have to up and down from 103, came down to $22. Now it's back up to $45. You can see the last stick. It went up over 20% in the past week. So if you want to invest, that's an opportunity. But that's a rocky road. So the last note, I think once a Bell Lab person is always a Bell Lab person. I think a lot of things came out from Bell Lab. A good thing happened. I think the country and the world benefit tremendously a lot from Bell Lab and people like Charles and Al. I think I, as a person, not as an MBA grower, but benefit tremendous from what I learned from Charles and Al, and also I think their friendship. Thank you. All the best to you, Charles.